So we're gonna do another development on this Maine Senate race. We put a clip out about Graham Platner, who was sort of the sort of populist left, sort of ex-military oyster farmer candidate, who was running, doing very well in the polls against Susan Collins in the general election, up by 14 points. Seemed to be cruising, seemed to be building a lot of momentum. And then, of course, Janet Mills, current governor, 77-year-old woman, pro-Israel woman, entered the race at Chuck Schumer's request. And that kind of threw a wrench into that primary, and it's now making it one of the most watched primaries of the cycle. And just a few days after her entrance into the race, we started seeing these Oppo research dumps on Graham Platner. So the Washington Post reports Maine Senate candidate downplayed sexual assault concerns in deleted posts. Graham Platner, a U.S. Senate candidate from Maine, responded dismissively to a cartoon about sexual assault in the military and downplayed the challenges service members face in reporting sexual assault in unearthed Reddit posts from 2013. In today's current climate, when every whisper of a misplaced hand brings down a feature-length film, anyone who actually thinks the military is purposefully covering up, to save the career of some goddamn captain is clearly both an idiot and junior enough in rank or life experience to think it matters, he wrote on Reddit about sexual assault in the military. In a separate thread about a video promoting underwear designed to prevent grape, Platner urged people to avoid alcohol so they don't end up in a dangerous situation. Grape is a real thing, he wrote. If you're so worried about it to buy Kevlar underwear, you'd think you might not get blacked out, fucked up around people you aren't comfortable with. The posts, which were obtained by the Washington Post and verified using an archive of deleted Reddit comments, are part of a large cache of online messages that were deleted shortly before Platner launched his insurgent bid to defeat Republican Senator Susan Collins in Maine. I would love to know how shortly before. Like, is it obvious that he did that just when he decided to run, or was it like, a couple years ago? CNN first reported that the oyster farmer and Marine Corps combat veteran ridiculed rural white Mainers as actually racist and stupid in 2020 and described himself as a communist on the platform. On Friday, Platner's political director resigned, saying in a resignation letter his online comments are not words or values I can stand behind in a candidate for the United States Senate. One of Platner's 2013 comments was a reply to a user who defended the need for the anti-grape shorts. There's always that story about the girl who gets graped because she drank too much and somebody took advantage of that commenter wrote. So then Platner responds, how about people just take some responsibility for themselves and not get so fucked up they wind up having sex with someone they don't mean to, Platner said in reply. Men and women, you make a choice to consume enough of a substance to lose your self-control. So if you don't want to be in a compromising situation, act like an adult for fuck's sake. So those are the comments. Here he is in a sweatshirt outside trying to clean this up. 5.8 million views on this. This went pretty viral. Here he is explaining the context and doing his little mea culpa here.
As you've probably seen, there's a story that's broken. Hey all, it's Graham here. As you've probably seen, there's a story that's broken about comments I made on Reddit in an earlier part of my life. As I read through them, I read things that I absolutely do not agree with. I read through and I see things words and statements that I abhor. I also see the trajectory of my life. When I got back from Afghanistan in 2011, I stayed in the Army for another year. I got out in 2012. Some of the worst comments I made, the things that I think are least defensible, that I wouldn't even try to defend, come from that time. I had spent the bulk of my 20s in the infantry, deploying overseas, fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. The infantry was a very male-dominated place. It's a very masculine world. When I was in, women weren't allowed in the infantry. It's changed now, and that's a good thing. But when I got out, I still had the crude humor, the dark feelings, the offensive language that really was a hallmark of the infantry when I was in it. I made comments that I'm not happy about, that I do not agree with, but they came from a time and place in my life. And as I watch, or as I read through the comments that were released, I can see myself changing. My language gets less crude, my thoughts and my feelings get a lot less kind of rough around the edges. I do get almost more disillusioned though, and it's important to know that this was a time in my life where I was struggling deeply. I got out of the Army in 2012. I had PTSD. I had depression. I had all of the things that come with serving in a war, in 2 wars, that I eventually began to not believe in at all. It left me feeling very unmoored. It left me feeling very disillusioned, very alienated, and very isolated. And I think like a lot of people, I went on the internet to post stupid things and get in fights and find some form of community in some way, some outlet for my feelings, for my rage, for my isolation.
You're muted.
Sorry. That goes on for a few more minutes. We don't have to listen to the whole thing. The upshot is he essentially says, yeah, he was basically a bitter, angry online asshole until he found community, moving back home to Maine, opening a business, and then deciding to, pursue office. So that is his story.
When I drank 20 shots of tequila, I didn't blame my sergeant for using me as a receptacle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Ro Khanna comes out and says, let's be clear. The DSCC leaked this to try and destroy Platner the day their hand-picked candidate entered the race. That's the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. I respect Platner's journey and the man he is today. I reject the politics of personal destruction. I stand by my endorsement. I won't cower to the establishment. And what does he mean by that? Well, 3 days prior to these reports about these Reddit posts coming out, Janet Mills entered the race at the behest of Chuck Schumer and the DSCC. So this is quite obviously a coordinated Oppo research dump. And if it couldn't be more obvious, here's Chuck Schumer just 2 days ago, amidst all of these leaks, essentially offering his endorsement to Janet Mills, the incumbent 77-year-old governor.
Maine at the top, there's obviously an important Senate race happening there. Are you supporting Governor Janet Mills in the primary, and do you consider Graham Platner's recently unearthed comments disqualifying?
Look, I'll let the people of Maine decide the second. We think that Janet Mills is the best candidate to retire Susan Collins. She's a tested
and also to retire in the
governor,
next 2 years because she's elderly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
2-term governor, and the people of Maine have an enormous amount of affection and respect for her. Yes.
All right. So he is referring not only to the comments, but of course, we also have here video shows Graham Platner with troubling tattoo that appears to be a Nazi symbol. That's right. That's right. So here he is dancing around and singing drunkenly with this apparent Nazi tattoo on him. Go kill the music so we don't get copyrighted, but there he is. I think this is at his sister-in-law's wedding, which makes sense. Having a grand old time. Tattoo. Kind of price guy. Oh,
just won over all the ladies in Maine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A recently surfaced video shows Maine Democratic U.S. Senate candidate Graham Platner with a chest tattoo of the SS Totenkopf, the skull and crossbones emblem used by Nazi death head units. Platner has stated he got the tattoo while drunk as a young Marine on shore leave in Croatia and was unaware of its Nazi affiliation until recently. So there you can see, there's the tattoo on his chest, and then there is the symbol right next to it. Source image, that's from the video that we just played. And so here is Graham Platner once again. Outside in a sweatshirt, having to clean this up. So funny. Every day he's going to be outside having to say sorry for something.
Here. I want to talk
Graham
to
Platner
myself
here.
And some machine gunners I served in Fallujah. Hey everyone, Graham Platner here. I want to talk to you about something. In 2007, when I was a young infantry sergeant in the Marine Corps, myself and some machine gunners.
I
served
appeared in a
Fallujah-
Amos and Andy sketch.
Yeah,
Back
tomorrow.
then, we didn't consider that offensive.
Everybody, Graham Platner here. So yeah, there's a second family in Thailand. That's mine. That's true. I started that family around 2015. I was suffering PTSD. I had to get away. And anyway, now I got 3 Thai children over there.
I want to apologize to any Croatian women who might have gotten the clap from me.
Yeah.
16 women make the claim. I'm dubious, but 9 for sure.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, Graham Platner here.
Hey,
I want to
Graham
talk to you
Platner
about
here.
something. In 2007, when I was a young infantry sergeant in the Marine Corps.
Should start a podcast called Graham Platner here. Just every episode. Graham Platner here. Graham Platner here. So yeah, it is true. Me and my buddies used to every Thursday night get wasted and drive in our pickup truck around the high school track. And one night there's a guy there he was wearing dark clothes at night. Let's just say it was very hard to see. And he's no longer with us, and I'm very sorry about that. But we're going to move forward.
And we're
Myself and
past
some-
the statute of limitations because the great state of Maine, vehicular manslaughter has an 18-month window for prosecution.
Yeah.
Machine gunners I served in Fallujah and Ramadi with were on our 3rd deployment. We were in a naval vessel and we pulled in for a Liberty port in Split, Croatia. We went ashore to do the thing that young Marines do, which tends to be carousing and sometimes getting tattoos. We wanted to get something that represented our jobs, our service, fighting in Fallujah and Ramadi as machine gunners. We went ashore, we found a tattoo parlor after a fair amount of heavy carousing, and we found a tattoo on the wall, a piece of flash that looked like a terrifying skull and crossbones. We thought it looked cool, and so we got it.
And we were shit.
I have had this tattoo for the last 18 years. I re-enlisted into the United States Army with this tattoo, where I was screened for hate and gang-related tattoos. I worked for the State Department as a contractor, where I got a full physical, which included screening my tattoos. I've gone through life with this thing, taking my shirt off, having photographs taken, videos taken. I've been very, very open in my life with the fact I had a skull and crossbones on my chest, because that's what I thought it was. It's come to my attention that it has a stark resemblance to a symbol that is used by neo-Nazis. And I want to say that was not the intent at all. And the idea that I've been going around with something like that utterly horrifies me. I know that symbols like this can be incredibly damaging to people, and the idea that I've had it all these years and it could have been read like that is incredibly troubling.
I kept wondering, why am I getting these blonde-haired, blue-eyed smoke shows throwing themselves at me every time I go to the beach? I don't understand it. I mean, I'm a good-looking guy, but not that good-looking. And now I know why. Now I know why. You know, it did occur to me, this is kind of strange. It's kind of strange. All these Germanic-looking women are just glued to me. Yeah.
So now I have.
Now I know.
I have covered it over with 2 lightning bolts that resemble S's for Social Security.
I was told
belief
they're
in
Harry
preserving
Potter
Social
symbols.
Security.
My children are big Harry Potter fans. They said, get those 2 lightning bolts. So, problem solved.
You could call me the politician who lived.
Yeah. Right.
I have lived a life dedicated to anti-fascism, anti-racism, and anti-Nazism. I think that racism and anti-Semitism are a long scourge on our society and a long scourge on our politics, and I think it has no place in our world. For that reason, I have gone and gotten it covered up.
There it is.
Last night, I went to a tattoo parlor, and I got this to cover up the skull and crossbones.
Now it's a turtle.
What is it?
You happy now, you queers? Now it's a turtle. Now it's not a Nazi symbol anymore. Whatever it is, some kind of sea creature. I got it covered up and taken care of. And by the way, while my shirt is pulled up and my underwear is showing, this has got a message for Chuck Schumer. While I was at the tattoo parlor last night, I had Free Palestine tattooed on my cock. And why don't you come up here and suck it, you blackballing piece of shit? Why don't you lean me up against the wall of this shed and blow me like a schoolgirl at summer camp? How's that? How's that? You happy now? I got the tattoo. I apologize for my Reddit post. Now leave me the fuck alone. Next day, he has to apologize. Graham Platner here. Yesterday, I made some comments about the Senate Minority Leader that were ill-advised. I've been told I can never talk like that about another Democrat, only about Republicans. So, with that being said, here's a message from my opponent, Susan Collins. I got the Free Palestine tattooed on my cock. Why don't you come up here and suck it out of me? You ghost face, 1 foot in the grave looking whore. Why don't you come up here? I'm waiting for you. I'm local, babe. Come get me. All right. The next day, can't do. Okay. Next day, he makes another video. Hey, Graham Platner here. Been advised by my staff to just kind of lay off the dick sucking remarks altogether. When I look back at yesterday and the day before yesterday, that's not a man I recognize.
That was a different person.
That was a different person.
I did. Graham Platner here. I did not know that this particular tattoo represents an invitation to the Senate cloakroom glory hole. I do not want to attract that type of attention, so I will be covering this one over. We are consulting this time with experts on what exactly to cover it with.
Every day of his campaign, he has to go outside in a sweatshirt and give a 5-minute mea culpa about the thing he said the day before. That's his new campaign strategy. Wow. Well, there it is. There's the golden boy, Graham Platner. Well, here he is in a much more formal setting, explaining away some of these scandals. This is CBS 13 News in Maine. So let's take a look.
About a couple of the other posts real quick. The one about where you asked why black people don't tip. Why did you write that?
Well, it just keeps getting worse. every development is just worse and worse and worse. The Reddit post.
It says here you got Jude down at a garage sale.
Yeah. Exactly. I posted on Reddit that you got Jude down at your yard sale. Oh, that's fucking great.
I want to ask you just about a couple of the other posts real quick. The one about where you asked why black people don't tip. Why did you write that?
Well, if you read
Jews don't tip either.
The
Jews
comment
don't tip
thread was the whole point was to
blacks.
ask an uncomfortable question of someone of another race for something that you were wondering. I asked the question.
All right. So he says, I was baited into that one. I was in this conversation where they said, make an uncomfortable, slightly racist remark about a group of people that you don't really understand very well. So I did it. So I played along.
When this initially came to me, I did not take this seriously because I have never remotely thought of this in that context. I've had this thing for 20 years and nobody's ever brought it up.
Did you notice the similarity after it was pointed out?
Of course. No, after it was pointed out, I mean, it was noted. But I will just say that it's a skull and crossbones. It has a similarity to like lots of skull and crossbones. And skull and crossbones motifs, again, super popular amongst military units, both American and foreign. They're all over the world. I never once thought about it in that context. And the moment it was pointed out to me, I have gotten it covered up because I have been an avowed anti-Nazi since I was a kid. I grew up listening to Dead Kennedys and the Dropkick Murphys. I grew up as like a young punk rock kid. I hate anti-Semitism. I hate Nazism and Nazis. I'm a avowed opponent of fascism. I've got, by the way, 13
You mean an
years of Reddit
anti-fascist?
comments that can attest to that.
You're an anti-fascist? Is that what you're saying?
That's my story. That's my story.
I mean, look, I gotta say, man, and that's the first thing I thought when I saw the tattoo. That's like a cliche military guy.
Oh yeah,
death we are kind of a tattoo. Like, why would you think that unless you know that?
Unless you know, like, yeah, no, I don't. I obviously take him at his word that he did not know that was a Nazi tattoo. I mean that makes sense. So here he answers a question about whether or not Republicans are going to use this against him should he be the nominee.
I was going to ask about that. What do you think about Senate Republicans using all of these posts to their advantage to try and discredit your campaign?
I think it's going to fall flat. I think they're going to run attack ads, but they're going to call me a communist no matter what. They called Hillary Clinton a communist. They call anyone who ever advocates for any sort of beneficial programs for working people, a communist or a socialist. That's what they say. And I am absolutely pushing for beneficial programs for working people. I mean, that is the core of my platform. That is why I'm in this race. So, that's what they're going to do. Sorry. That is what they are going to do. And it's going to be an attack ad, and it's going to be an attack ad that they were going to make anyways.
Can you talk about the conversation you had with your political director when she resigned?
She didn't have one. She sent me a text that said I resigned. I have the text.
Were you surprised?
No, I was not surprised. Okay. It had been disconnected from this. It had been she was not a good fit.
She was a stupid bitch anyway. I fucking hated her guts.
And then this happened, and that was the end of that.
Okay. Graham Platner here. Yesterday I made some ill-advised comments about my former political director. Keeps I gotta say, on a somewhat serious note, like, it does take balls for, like, the political class in this country to, like, send guys like this into hell, into wars that shouldn't be fought, to commit horrible acts that should never be committed, and then, like, pile on them for being fucked up when they get back. You know, that's kind of what this strikes me as a little bit. But not Keith Olbermann. Platner, out now. No Nazi tattoos. This is not complicated. Good boy that Keith Olbermann is. He's trying to force him out over this. Branko Marcetic says, whatever you think about Platner and these controversies, it's comical that the Democratic establishment spent the entire past year insisting the left made their party too woke and cancel happy, and are now desperately trying to cancel a left insurgent for not being woke enough. Exactly. Right. Reverting to old ways.
I mean, you want to talk about, we got into this a little bit when we showed that old clip of Johnny Cash and Chris Christopherson being interviewed, where, man, they're very left. They're talking about homelessness. Right. Johnny Cash was a prison rights advocate, his very beloved country star. It didn't happen overnight that they massaged people's brains into becoming so right wing. It's not the natural default. What you need, and that's been very obvious to anyone paying attention for a long time, is an army of Brad Platners. Right. If you want to win these people back. And every time they get one, they want to excise them. This is how they've made it easy for Trump and that brand of conservatism. It's so obvious that they hate working people. They could not be more obvious that culturally they are deeply uncomfortable. Look, Donald Trump, born with a fucking silver spoon in his mouth, shits in a gold toilet, was able to credibly work at a McDonald's and not look uncomfortable.
Right.
Tell me one Democrat you think could do that without it being cringe.
Exactly. Well,
without
this guy
looking very uncomfortable. And that's why they don't like him.
Yeah, and that's it. So you have a Democratic Party who finds this young guy with, a military background and a local background, with a good message, who's blowing it out of the water in the polls. And they don't think to themselves, how can we boost this guy? They think, how can we destroy this guy? Yep. That is what they think to themselves. And then people wonder.
And then they want to have a no King's March.
Yeah, and then they want to have a no King's March. Exactly. So Batya Ungar Sargon says, a tent big enough for Nazi tattoos, but not pro-Israel Zionists. The progressive left, 2025. So Manu Raju reports that Bernie Sanders just told us he's still standing behind Graham Platner as his campaign is dogged by controversy in the Maine Senate race. I think Manu Raju works for Axios because Bernie just sat down for an interview with them. I personally think he's an excellent candidate. I'm going to support him and look forward to him becoming the next senator in the state of Maine, he said. Wow, Bernie showing signs of testicles there. That's new.
It's not a question of if you're a Nazi or not a Nazi. Are you a Nazi that supports healthcare?
Yeah. Right.
Or are you a Nazi that supports the oligarchs?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Batya jumps on that. Bernie Sanders stands by Platner after Nazi tattoo was exposed, while the White House ditches Ingracia after his racist text message were exposed. So, yeah, there was a White House appointee who basically said that all of the holidays celebrating black people should be done away with. Like, no more Martin Luther King Day or no more Juneteenth. And I guess his nomination was pulled. So she goes on to make the argument vehemently that Donald Trump is not a racist. Here she is just a couple days ago trying to shut down this black guy who says Donald Trump has a history of racism.
Firstly and immediately and without hesitation condemn this disgusting
Donald
writing.
Trump has a history of racism himself.
No, that's
These
not
people-
true.
Are you kidding me?
sorry,
Donald
that's
Trump
not
started his
true.
career with racism. In the 1970s, he was sued for housing discrimination. In 1989, he was a part of he was led the lynch mob against the Central Park Five. In the 1990s, he was sued by casino workers for racial discrimination. He led a 5.5-year campaign against Barack Obama for.
And he goes on and on and on. And look, you could make the argument pretty fairly that like Donald Trump's racism has caused less real world harm than the racism of people like Joe Biden, right? Bill Clinton. Like you can make that argument. But are you going to go on TV and try and say, no, he does not have a history of I mean, that is just an absurd comment. It's an absurd comment. But that's Batya Angar Sargon in true pick-me fashion, as usual.
She laid back on the Nancy Sinatra 1967 eye makeup, I said.
Yeah, right, exactly. She's going a little more subtle.
Somebody must have said something.
All right, so all this happens. So Graham Platner's crushing it in the polls. Schumer recruits Janet Mills, the pro-Israel establishment incumbent governor, to run against him. There are clearly coordinated Oppo research dumps that come out in order to crush him. And just as that Oppo research was coming out, there was a poll funded by the University of New Hampshire. But guess what? The results were not what Chuck Schumer and the Democratic leadership must have expected. Maine Senate Democratic primary, Graham Platner, 58, Janet Mills, 24. And then you got a couple of also-rans. This was taken between the 16th of October and the 21st. The first of these Oppo research dumps came out on the 17th, which means 5 out of the 6 days that these cover are post-smear job, more or less. And look at that. Look at that. Made pretty much no impact whatsoever. The fact that the incumbent governor is losing by 34 points in a primary to this guy who, is a bit of a Meshuggah, I'll admit. That says something. That says something, that this did not work. Rebecca Katz says, in other words, they were in the field as all the Oppo hit. Mainers have Graham for Maine's back because they know he has theirs. I like this one. They're calling it the Totenkopf bump. Winning by 34 points.
I don't understand these political strategists. You really thought you were going to hurt a guy with a Nazi tattoo in the whitest state in the country?
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
In the Trump era, no less. Exactly.
Yeah.
But here is a fascinating breakdown of the poll. So Hidehiro Anto breaks down the sort of crosstabs within the poll, where you see Mills versus Platner by political ideology. So socialists go for Platner 81-7, no surprise. Progressives go for Platner 73-13, no big surprise there. Here's where it gets interesting. Liberals went for Mills 44-40, but look at moderates. Moderates went for Platner by 29. And this is what the Democratic Party as an institution refuses to understand, which is that left-wing populists who they like to brand socialists and therefore out of bounds, they will do much better with moderate voters than the kind of PMC talking doctrinaire liberals do. Even though these left populists are to the left of the liberals, and you would think, well, if moderates are to the right of liberals, then they're going to gravitate to the liberals, but they don't. We saw this over and over again in the 2016 primary, where you have Bernie Sanders winning in states like West Virginia and Wyoming. West Virginia and Wyoming are not hotbeds of democratic socialism, to put it mildly, but people there respond to Bernie's working class signaling and centering of working class issues in ways that they don't respond to platitudinous PMC gobbledygook like Stronger Together and Love Trump's Hate. And so this is a lesson that the Democrats refuse to learn, and they do it on purpose. They do it on purpose. They want to pretend that the moderates are going to gravitate toward the liberals, when you can see in this case, even though Platner's program is far to the left of Mills, he's much more popular amongst moderates than she is, because his way of communicating connects with them in ways that establishment libs don't. And that is the lesson of the 2016 primary. That's the lesson of this whole political moment that we're in. And it's the lesson that Democrats refuse to learn on purpose because it would blow up their whole grift. It would derail their whole gravy train. They must insist that no, liberals are best positioned to win moderates. When you look at the numbers here, that is not true. And it's been untrue for many years. And you've seen defeat after defeat after defeat and missed opportunity after missed opportunity by Democrats because of a refusal to learn that lesson. Don't forget, in 2018, you had a blue wave year. Susan Collins cruised to re-election that year. They should have beat her 6 years ago. They didn't. And this is why. And they have a chance to beat her now, and they're trying to derail the guy who can because of, 12-year-old Reddit posts when the guy just got back from a war zone.
Well, remember, as we've seen time and time again, it's not a political party. And a lot of writing has been done about how it got that way. It's not a political party with political aims and political objectives. You look at, I don't like the DSA and the kind of politics it represents. I think it discredits the left when you got a group of, mostly privileged white kids representing exactly all the worst cliches of what the left is.
Right.
However, it is a political organization with a political program. Man, they really want to fund out-of-town trans surgeries in New York. Like,
and pretty soon they're going to.
And pretty soon they're going to. They really mean that. Like, you could disagree with it, but is it the purpose of why they exist as an organization? Yes. To actually enact policy is their purpose as an organization. I think a lot of their policy ideas are hopelessly suburban white kid because that's who belongs to the organization mostly, but their purpose is political. The Democratic Party is a professional organization aimed at elevating the careers of its members and protecting its financial grift. That is the purpose of it. If you how do you know a thing? By what it does. If you wanted to win, all of these things were evident decades ago. Why didn't they pursue it? Because now they have a club and it belongs to them. You start letting guys like Platner in and you start talking about policy, oh my God, because their donors don't like these kinds of policies. So where's the grift going to come from? Where's the money going to come from? How's the revolving door going to work? You start doing things that pisses off Jeff Bezos. You don't get the board seat at Amazon when you go out of government, right?
Exactly.
This fucks up their whole thing. They're not a political party. That's why Mamdani, this guy, that's why they're not taking notes. Oh, wow, that seems to be really working. It's not rocket science. It's pretty fucking obvious. As you say, Vermont is not this left-wing state. They keep reelecting Bernie Sanders. The only people who don't find Amy Klobuchar repulsive are PMCs that make money off the Democratic Party and the very small number of cringe suburban libs that speaks to, that appeals to. That is why they need a political party. That's why the founders didn't want political parties. They saw that political parties would wind up being self-interested organizations whose only real purpose was to further the ambitions of its members, and that's exactly what the Democratic Party is.
Exactly.
Could someone like Amy Klobuchar win dog catcher without a big organization pouring money into her? Could most of these Democrats win in a fair system where you didn't have this organization screening out everyone that people might like and giving them no other options than whatever unappealing ghoul they stand for election who's running against a guy who thinks there's legitimate and illegitimate race. So fuck it, they'll vote for him.
Right. Exactly. And to just put a button on this segment, Graham Platner finally put out a video where he wasn't apologizing for something. So he apparently had a town hall last night. It was very well attended, despite these attempts to derail his campaign. So here he is fielding a comment from the audience about all of this brouhaha.
From mainstream media. I've seen articles from mainstream media or like legacy media where they haven't talked about you before at all, but now, I mean, I don't want to make a connection, but after Janet Mills started running, and it's kind of been, without saying, I feel like I don't need to say anything. Everyone knows what I mean, but your thoughts?
I'm not going to minimize what has come out. I am not today who I always have been. I used to hold different opinions. I used to use different language. I said things and believed things that today I find abhorrent. I also grew. I met new people. I learned of other people's experiences. I realized that my experiences were my own, and they colored my opinions and where I was. And that the more open I could be to listening to other people's stories, the more open I was willing to be to extend compassion and empathy to others, the more I realized that many of those stories and beliefs that I had were wrong. And I changed them. And it was through that journey that I became who I am today. And I will say this, I am ashamed of things I once said, but I am not ashamed of who I am today. The establishment is spooked. And I'll say this, if they thought that this was going to scare me off, if they thought that ripping my life to pieces, trying to destroy it, was going to make me think that I shouldn't undertake this project, they clearly have not spent a lot of time around Marines.
Yeah, they can't. They're not going to beat this guy.
They're not going to beat him. And, between this guy and Mamdani, you're starting to see a pattern here where the old guard throws everything they have at someone, and it doesn't stick. It doesn't stick. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Biden fucked them over, lying to people, saying he was good to go. Liberals swallowed that and regurgitated that, and then they got so much egg on their face during that debate meltdown and everything that happened since, culminating in, of course, a second Trump victory. I just think a lot of them have been broken to the point where they are not as subservient to leadership as they once would be. 4 years ago, if this came out and it was clear to everybody that Chuck Schumer and the bosses of the party say, no, not Platner, Mills, you would have had a mass exodus from the Platner campaign into Mills' campaign. Given how things have unfolded in these past couple of years, and I admit, I never thought this would happen. Like, I never thought the Democratic base would exercise this kind of, autonomy and independence. But this is why the Mamdani win was so significant, because it signaled that, no, actually, there is kind of a Tea Party moment happening where the voters are not just going to follow marching orders from leadership anymore. You saw that in New York. You're seeing that here, where as these Oppo research dumps are at their most powerful, which is 2 or 3 days into the news cycle, he's still blowing her out by 34 points.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. The interests, in the end, the signaling of a Hillary Clinton appeals to a certain kind of suburban PMC wine mom lib, but their interests diverge in that the Democrats don't care about winning. They care about grifting.
Right.
As long as they're getting funded, as long as their professional opportunities are intact, they don't really give a shit. And they would rather lose to Donald Trump than win with a figure like Bernie Sanders, who's going to come in and overturn the tables of the money lenders when he gets in, or theoretically, they would fear. These suburban wine moms actually have an existential dread of Donald Trump winning. And now you did it to them twice.
Right.
That's why you're getting some independence from leadership, because in the end, their interests are not aligned in ways those wine moms never understood.